Presento esta sesión con un gran placer. Damos la bienvenida a Gregory Kramer y en su nombre a toda la comunidad de Inside Dialogue. Este evento lo pedimos a Gregory la posibilidad de traer y de difundir el Inside Dialogue en lengua española. Sandra Ramos, que está por aquí, a lo mejor puedes saludar, Sandra, del Centro Theravada de México.
Gracias, querida Bea. Bienvenidos a todos. Hicimos este trabajo en conjunto con Inside Dialogue, Espacio de Terapia, el que tiene Bea en Madrid, y el Centro de Meditación Theravada, y es para nosotros todo un gusto tenerlos. Bienvenidos.
Gracias, Sandra. Y bueno, decir que Inside Dialogue, la comunidad de Inside Dialogue se basa en la generosidad, y así ha sido la acogida que tuvo nuestra petición con Gregory Kramer, que estuvo encantado de venir y de compartir con nosotros. Él dice que bueno, que para él es un regalo también el estar transmitiendo lo que a él le enseñaron tantos maestros reconocidos. Te animamos en este ambiente de amabilidad y de amistad a que crees un ambiente también relajado para ti, que apagues los dispositivos, si es posible, los que no vayas a tener que utilizar, para poder concentrarte lo mejor posible. Si en algún momento vas a cambiar de sitio o crees que es conveniente, pues apaga la cámara para poder hacerlo y así evitar también distracciones. Y te animamos a que utilices también la vista del hablante cuando empiece la charla, pero que al mismo tiempo ahora, si te parece bien también, ver la vista de galería. Ahora mismo estamos 126 personas conectadas, y cuando lleguemos a la hora de las preguntas y las respuestas, que será dentro de un rato, pues animaros a utilizar el icono de reacciones, y siempre que necesitéis contactar con el equipo técnico, como decía Lu, pues ahí estamos disponibles, y también en el momento que se necesite abrir el micrófono y comentar algo si es oportuno también. Bueno, es un placer en nombre de Sandra y el Centro Theravada de México, y en el nombre mío y de todo el grupo de Espacio de Formación en Salud y Psicoterapia, pues el presentar a Gregory, que es maestro, autor, escritor y formador de maestros de Inside Dialogue. Él fue el fundador del Inside Dialogue, del diálogo con atención plena o el diálogo consciente. Tiene muchos libros escritos en inglés, y en español está traducido su libro de diálogo con atención plena. Luego lo pondremos en el chat. Gregory practica la meditación desde 1974 y ha estudiado con reconocidos maestros, bueno, algunos de ellos, pues Anagarika Damadina, el venerable Palangoda, Ananda Maitreya y muchos otros. Desde 1995 su principal objetivo ha sido desarrollar y compartir el diálogo con atención plena, y ha sido, como decía antes, el fundador de la comunidad de diálogo consciente. Creo que el trabajo que Gregory ha impulsado y que toda la comunidad de Inside Dialogue está haciendo en el mundo, pues creo que contribuye, y tenemos la esperanza de que así sea, pues de generar paz en el mundo y cooperación y entendimiento entre los humanos. Así que, Gregory, con profundo agradecimiento, te doy la palabra.
Can I just offer something while this is going on, Lou, if you could translate this for me? Um,
Sí,
you might,
Gregory.
go ahead.
Gregory quiere que yo traduzca algo en estos momentos.
So this stuff that's going on now, this is exactly life.
Esto que está ocurriendo en estos momentos es la vida.
So how's your mindfulness now?
¿Cómo está ahora mismo la atención plena, el mindfulness?
And not only mindfulness, how is what mindfulness is knowing? How's your agitation or calm?
Y no solamente la atención plena, el mindfulness, pero cómo se están sintiendo. ¿Hay agitación? ¿Qué está sucediendo? ¿Cómo se sienten? ¿Hay calma? ¿Hay agitación?
Nothing is left out.
No dejamos nada fuera de la práctica.
Okay, so now I'll get out of the way.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's in these circumstances, not just when there's a problem with Zoom, but when we hear that a friend is dying, you know, or when we ourselves are ill, or when someone at work is difficult, or when we have trouble with our mother or our brother or our sister. This is the stuff of life. If our practice of mindfulness, if our understanding of Dhamma doesn't include this, if it only happens on a cushion, in a meditation hall, in a special exercise, we're going to just keep suffering. So, okay, so I've been invited to speak specifically about insight dialogue. So I'd like to share with you not just how it works, but I really would love for you to understand and to feel the purpose of insight dialogue, very connected with the purpose of any mindfulness practice, connected with the purpose of any Buddhist view, or any really wisdom, deep wisdom tradition. All speaks to this human experience. That's the point. The beauty of insight dialogue practice is that it directly recognizes not only the difficulties of human relationship, the complexities, the sorrow, the hunger, the loneliness, and so on, but it also recognizes the wholesome power, the effectiveness of relationship as part of a path of waking up. So, in this practice, there are three things that come together, and each one of them by itself is very powerful for bringing some understanding, some freedom, for changing our lives in a good way. The first of those is something that brings us together with a shared background. Most of us have some practice of meditative qualities of the mind, like mindfulness. Mindfulness is just one of many, but it's a very powerful practice, yeah? All by itself. If we learn to observe the mind, observe the body, if we learn to know what's going on in the body mind while it's happening, without falling into it, without fusing with it, if we can just know our own emotions, our own thoughts, and the process of thinking, we're no longer trapped by habit. It's a big deal. It's a very big deal. It's the difference right there between only living from prior habits and living with some freedom now. Do you understand what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Because otherwise, The mind, the body has so much conditioning. It's just going to keep doing the same thing. Some of it will be very good because we had good parents, some kindness in our culture. Some of it will be, well, you know, right? You know that sometimes the mind is angry, greedy, scared, and we act from that same habit, right? So you don't know. And it just goes on like that. In the, religious traditions of Asia, they call that samsara. It's just like a circle that just keeps going and going and going. And it's painful. And it doesn't stop. And we hurt other people. We participate in systems that hurt other people because we're ignorant, right? So mindfulness is that point of freedom. But there are other powerful meditative qualities like tranquility, like a gathered mind of concentration, or a mind that is stable and sees clearly. Energy, joy, these are powerful qualities by themselves, without any philosophy, without any religion, just by itself. If you start observing the body-mind, if you start calming down, if you start feeling the energy of your, awareness and your engagement with the world in a clear way, good things are going to happen, right? Just that much. Very powerful. That's why mindfulness has become such a big movement, because it works. It has, by itself, it's got some weaknesses, but it's very powerful. So insight dialogue has that meditative quality, incorporates all the mindfulness, but all the meditative qualities come in, and there are guidelines in insight dialogue and practices to specifically support the development of those meditative qualities. So you have that, you can cultivate that capacity, that power, and put it to work to get free of that ignorance of habit. See, the purpose is always in there. You understand that the purpose is right there. Right? It's not a hobby or something. It's like, changes the heart, yeah? Insight dialogue also brings in another powerful factor, which is deep wisdom teachings. The tradition that it comes from, the Buddhist tradition, is a collection of teachings that have been tested for a couple of thousand years based on what we can call a very deep psychology, a deep understanding of the human mind, how it works with the body, how it relates with others, how it sees the world and, sees it through its lenses of conditioning. That you see me right now speaking, and you're seeing me according to your history of seeing other Americans or other men or other teachers, or seeing just other humans, like safe, not safe, smart, not smart, believable or not. All those things are operating now, but the deeper, you might say, mechanisms of how your mind works, of how mind works, of how we work together, that deep understanding, the more we know about this and really know deeply, not just thinking really know, this can change us. For example, if I know that it's a universal experience that things will change in a way that's out of my control. And that's just a fact, right? The mind can know this. But if I learn this in a very direct and deep way, then I can, maybe not have a fight with everything that happens in my life, because I know it's part of this process. I will grow old. I will get sick. People I love will get sick. It's not personal. It's just a fact of nature. So understanding that natural law, or if I know that when I see beautiful things, I'll tend to want more of them, or if there are things that are painful or difficult, I want to get away from them. Very basic fact. But if it's pointed out to me, and I start to see how I go through life, want this, don't want that, and I'm constantly doing that. It's like, whoa, I'm tense almost all the time, trying to get or push away, just as a fact, right? You don't need religion, but you do need a wisdom tradition that can point to something basic about the human condition. You see what I'm saying? So that wisdom, shall we say, body, by itself, without meditation or any of it, is powerful. It can change you, change your life. It can free you if it can get in. But when you bring the meditative qualities with the wisdom, then it can get in. That's the point of meditation, is that the qualities of mind, of body, of heart are such that now the wisdom, you're stable enough, you're not so tense, receptive, open, you can pause, you can see what's going on. And now some of that wisdom can come in. See what I'm saying? So the wisdom aspect and the meditative aspect are a classic pair. And that's the basis of most of the world's contemplative traditions, the deep traditions that invoke understanding and love and letting go and care, are all based in a kind of a transformation that's possible when wisdom and these qualities of mind that are awake, receptive, and stable enough to let in the wisdom even when you don't like it. Right? You may not like being told, that my mind is always clinging to things. You may not want to hear that, but it is. Well, can you, so there's where the stability comes in of the meditative qualities, the equanimity. And the mindfulness, of course, to see your own mind. Oh, it is clinging. And then it starts to let go. See? So there's the wisdom and the meditation working together, right? And I don't mean just formal meditation. I mean anytime you're experiencing sati, mindfulness, perhaps investigation and energy, and sufficient tranquility or concentration, and the wisdom comes in, boom, anytime, anywhere you are, at the office, with your family, by yourself, going to the store, on a meditation cushion. Okay. And in Insight Dialogue, that wisdom aspect is what is brought in through contemplations that are offered. So the guidelines offer you this pausing, like the meditative qualities, relaxing, the tranquility, and receiving the contemplation. So now we're going to talk about this wisdom thing. But because we're pausing, we stop and we internalize it and make it real. It's like turning lead into gold. It's a transformation of concept to experience. Without the pause, without the meditative qualities, it stays as concept. So this depends on your practice. I'm going to be inviting us later into actual practice, so you can try this, see if it, actually works for you. But the experiment is for each of us to realize this, right? Like to pause while listening, let's say, not just while speaking, while listening, and letting it in such a way that because there's pausing, there's mindfulness, relax, enough samadhi or concentration. Can I find a truth in it? Can I find a living, embodied experience? So you'll see. So those two powerful things, the meditative qualities, the wisdom aspect, in Insight Dialogue are joined by a third, naturally powerful factor: relationship itself. So now, not only am I cultivating mindfulness by myself, let's say with my eyes closed, watching my breath, but I'm contemplating mindfulness with you together. So when I pause, and we know that pausing is stopping and bringing the mind into the moment, what's true now, what is known by mindfulness, right? So the pause is mindfulness. And I know that when you pause, it reminds me to wake up. So the meditative qualities are being mirrored between us, supported between us. So when you pause, up comes my mindfulness. I pause, up comes yours. In the same way that we're always doing the opposite, which is to say, you go on with your story and you're all excited and I get all excited and I completely lose mindfulness. You lose mindfulness. We know how to do that part together, right? We call that normal. What about pause and now? That same energy, that same relational sensitivity is evoking, bringing forward the mindfulness. What if my calm brings out and stabilizes your calm? So co-regulation, you could say. Right? So that's just the meditative qualities. Let's talk about relationship and the wisdom aspect. So now you're telling me something about your experience of what it's like to confront death as a living truth, like your mortality. Or you're telling me about, as you pause and you notice kind of in the moment of experience, let's say, a wanting, a hunger relationally or somehow in your life, this dissatisfaction, and you pause and you're describing it, and I'm receiving that. You're giving me a gift. You're like my teacher right now. So you're describing in actual experience something from the contemplation that gives me a way of seeing something that I haven't seen before. And as you're describing it, I'm of course naturally, because this is what humans do, I'm investigating it in my experience. And then I'm speaking, and I tell you how that feels in my throat, and like, yeah, I can feel some sort of a feeling of loss, like even when you just looked away from me just now, there was this moment of, am I okay? Is this okay? Do you like me? These are very normal things, right? But we see that they're tied to these basic hungers of the animal, of the heart. And you're hearing me. And so now the wisdom aspect is the wisdom aspect is getting these other perspectives from each other, if there's several of us or whatever. But also notice what's happening. As you and I investigate together, or three of us together, it's interesting, it's alive, and we stay with it. Compare this to, I say to you, go off in that corner and by yourself think about the fact of your death, or think about this, aspect of being hungry in the world for experiences and so on. How long until you're thinking about your last trip to the beach? 2 minutes? 1 minute? Not 5. But here, and you'll see, you can again see for yourself, but it would be very common that you're going to say after 15, 20 minutes, that was not enough time. And you've been completely focused. It's amazing. So the meditative quality of samadhi, of the gathered mind, the concentrated mind, is developing. But so is the understanding or the investigation of something deep in the human experience. So you have the wisdom aspect, you have the meditative aspect, and you have the power of relationship coming together in insight dialogue. And that's that can help us understand the potential of this practice for a deep understanding. And of course, I think that this is the most obvious thing, so I usually don't talk about it as much, but I think it's worth saying. If you don't practice being mindful with other people, then maybe you won't get better at it. And if you do practice being mindful while you're speaking and relating to people, maybe you will get better at it. And where do you make the most mistakes? Where do you have the most trouble? Maybe with other people. So I think it would be very good for us to have some time to practice. We'll have one session because of, we want to make sure there's time for, questions and this kind of thing. But we do definitely want to give you some time to practice. So I want to request, if anybody does not want to actually go into a breakout room to explore the experience of insight dialogue, could you please sign off now? Because when we form the rooms, if you leave after that, it messes everything up. So that would be very kind of you to leave now. I can recommend that you stay just because then you can see for yourself whether this kind of practice can be of benefit. So what we'll do is go into breakout rooms of 3. And each person will have, insight dialogue can just flow without taking turns, but especially when learning and also for certain kinds of practices for depth, it can help to take turns speaking and listening, to just focus on each piece. So each speaker will have 5 minutes, and then all together you'll have 8 minutes. Okay? And so the first thing you do, there will be an extra minute given to the first speaker, because you'll need to decide, you can say hi to each other, and then the speaker will need to, everybody will need to decide who goes first, second, and third. Okay, so that you'll do that first. And then you'll get, you'll see a banner with text show up that will remind you of the contemplation. It might say first speaker and then say something about what you're observing in experience. Then after 5 minutes, a banner will come up, time for the second speaker, and a reminder of the contemplation. Then it will do that again, and then you open up, releasing the form of taking turns, but continuing to cultivate the meditation practice together. And then, of course, at the end, you'll get a few minutes, not a few minutes, you'll get half a minute or whatever for to say thank you and so on. And then we'll come back together. Okay? So I'll now describe the practice. We're going to give particular attention to this guideline pause that I was just talking about. And inherent in pause, as I said, is there's you might say, layers of the practice that are all working together. The first is just what it sounds like. If you're speaking, actually, from time to time, stop, reestablish your mindfulness. Notice if what you're saying is, where it's coming from, if it's still true, if a sense of you be aware of the body, bring awareness to the body, and continue. Or before you first speak, or after you've paused, what am I about to say? So mindfulness, rather than habit, is the source of your words. Without mindfulness, what do you have? Habit. Automatic speech. Or mindless speech. Mindless speech. Very common. So pause includes this aspect of stopping. Even while you're speaking, maybe even in the middle of a sentence, pause. It can help to offer yourself mentally the guideline, pause, like say it in your mind, pause. See what would be spoken. And this is, we won't have time to go in depth with this, but in that very moment, you're practicing with the guideline, speak the truth. Like you're finding, what do I say now? What's true out of this silence, not out of habit. What's true out of something that is very present and alive now. So that pause, that mindfulness, and as you're listening, it's very easy to fall into the words of the other, the story. It can be very tender, very sweet, very inviting. And we think of good listening as, oh yeah, tell me everything, and you get lost in it. You fuse with that story. So pausing while you're listening includes non-clinging to that and kind of entering a receptive space of listening. Not where you have to fix, not where you have to even follow your own ideas or stories that come up. You know, someone says something about their father and say, oh yeah, my father, and then you're off with the father and they're still talking, but you're off, who knows where you've gone, right? Pause, let go of clinging to that, release, and come back. And you're really, so the quality of listening can become very refined, and you can see, maybe glimpse, how meditation can continue. Pause as you listen and as you speak. So I'd like to see if this is making sense so far. Maybe you could shake your heads if you understand. Okay, that's good. Yeah, because it's contrary to habit, you know. So as a wisdom aspect, as a contemplation, I'd like to invite you to notice the body-mind sensitivity, both just the pure touching of the, you know, what you're noticing, let's say, touching the chair or, you know, feeling in the, whatever the feelings in the body are, but also, because this is a relational practice, to notice that there's also the eye touch and the ear touch of, you know, with other people. So, you know, you might feel, for example, oh, when I pause, I notice there's a kind of a little bit of a, you know, I don't know if it's completely okay to speak right now, or, you know, how your actual experience of being with another person, two other people, is being, you know, what's it like to pause? Oh, my head is kind of buzzing, my ears are ringing a little bit, I hadn't noticed that. Take a breath. Okay, now I'm noticing the body-mind is a little more calm, and as I'm calming down, I can actually feel more at ease with both of you, you know. However the actual experience is includes, you know, well, I feel my glasses on my face, or I can feel the pressure from something I just ate or something, but there's also this experience. So nothing's left out in this sensitive body-mind. And that sensitivity, I'll give you some Buddhist language in case it's helpful. In a search for a way of describing the human dilemma, the Buddha often spoke about how there's contact with the world through the sense doors, like the eyes, the ears, the body. And that at that moment of contact, that there's these kind of underneath, there's these hungers that come up almost like an automatic kind of like a wanting pleasure, fearing pain, really basic stuff, always operating moment by moment. And that we follow that. And that's why the body-mind is never quite satisfied. It's always the next thing. And as the mind meditates, it gets more sensitive, more alert. And you begin to see that this can be a way of discomfort, so-called dukkha or suffering, but also, I pause, and just feel that those currents are operating. Like right now as I'm speaking, they're operating for me and for you. And between us, among us, we reflect it back and forth. If I don't follow that, it's a kind of a breath. Something in the body-mind can shift and not be driven, and becomes available to the world in a different way. See, so even under this simple contemplation, there's some very subtle teachings. So I'll go back and remind us that we're practicing with pause. First speaker, second, third, and then all three together. And that the contemplation is to notice this sensitivity in whatever is touching the body or seeing or hearing, or this living experience of pausing and being with others in your humanity. Okay? So, your host now will separate you into your breakout rooms, and I'll ring a bell to initiate. Pause, this human sensitivity, and the known by mindfulness. Well, it's a start. In a little bit, I'd like to explore together what you've experienced. And I'd like to invite a continuing sense of practice, which means both the continuation of developing mindfulness as we speak and as we listen, but also a continuation of looking at what it's like to be in this human experience together, sensitive, awake. Human beings, we're complex. And when one complex person meets another, the complexity is immeasurable. And yet, we do it all the time. And perhaps we could learn to do it better, Out of greater awareness, perhaps can come a greater compassion as we awaken from our own, turmoil and the busyness of the mind. Perhaps we become more sensitive to ourselves and to those around us. Perhaps we become more skillful. But I would also suggest that along with our perhaps greater compassion and greater skill can come greater happiness and even freedom. Freedom from habit. Freedom from ignorance, of, being blind to our own hearts, our own minds, blind to each other, blind to the world around us. It can be very good. Our capacity is enormous. So, perhaps the way to, if you would care to share something of your experience with your friends, your spiritual friends, perhaps raising the hand using the Zoom function, or not just questions, by the way, just observations is good. What did you see? What did you experience? Was it possible to cultivate mindfulness while with another? Was there any experience of investigating, the human sensitivity? Was that useful in any way? What did you notice?
Que yo estuve diciendo que puedo hablar igualmente en español o inglés. Entonces Gregory me pidió que me traduzco a mí misma. So I just wanted to share an observation when I was listening to another person, and she was speaking about what was making her happy and what she was feeling gratitude for. I just felt so much resonance with her face and her voice and her words that my chest was just growing with happiness and joy and gratitude. Quiero decir eso en español ahora. Cuando escuché a alguien hablando de su alegría y su gratitud, y viendo su cara, escuchando su tono de voz y sus gestos, yo sentí mi pecho creciendo con esta alegría y gratitud, como si fuera contagioso, as if it were contagious. It was hermoso. It was a lovely experience.
It is contagious. Love is contagious. Mindfulness is contagious. Anger is contagious. All of it. This is how humans came to survive in the world where animals were stronger. They could be together. And in working together, raising families together, having tribes or villages together, they could do things they couldn't do alone, and they could survive. The brain, the body, evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to reflect this relational sensitivity. It is contagious. So let's use it carefully. Let's use it well. This is putting the power of our relational sensitivity towards the work of awakening, towards the work of compassion, towards the work of deep understanding. Yeah, thank you.
Perdón. Al igual que Corrine, tuve una experiencia similar a la hora de que Yadel hablaba, inclusive ella mencionando que siempre sentía una emoción aquí en el pecho, y lo hacía de una manera tal que a pesar de estar usando una tecnología a kilómetros de distancia, ella está alrededor de unos 1,000 kilómetros en Monterrey, yo estoy en México. Fue realmente una experiencia que no había sentido yo al hablar con alguien a través de internet, a través de algo de Zoom. tal vez las palabras de Gregory al principio fueron las que me fueron ubicando más en este contexto, y pues mi práctica de meditación, principalmente vipassana, pues me ha ayudado mucho en este aspecto. Quiero hacer un paréntesis, si me permiten, Gregory. Yo también fui alumno, discípulo de Ajahn Sobin Namto, y aquí tengo precisamente su libro de cuando estuve con él. Y pues una de las cosas también de las que él me hizo abrir los ojos hace ya muchos años fue precisamente en poner la atención en la emoción que uno siente, y que, bueno, pues eso fue lo que experimenté en esta ocasión, y que curiosamente también en alguna plática, en algún taller que tomé con un asistente que está por aquí, Verónica Fernández, que tomé con ella a través de un instituto Dharmadata. En una de esas pláticas también ella hizo hincapié mucho en la emoción. Bueno, pues esto me hace entender que no hay distancias para poder mandar a otro ser lo que sale del corazón de uno. Gracias.
Hector is mentioning that he felt very similar as the last participant, as Corinne. He was very impressed by what he felt in this experience, mainly that he paid attention into the emotion that he was experiencing. And he was surprised that through the internet, he was able to feel that and to be able to witness the partner that was experiencing the same thing. He was so surprised about that. Like he kind of saying that even though we are in distance and we have internet, we still can connect through the heart and connect through the emotions. Right. And that was also thanks to your talk that he put his mind into that mindset. Right. And also he shares he had the same teacher as you, Gregory, Ajahn Suminanto. Mm-hmm. And he just shared the book. And that's pretty much the condensed.
Very good. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Hector. Very few people have in this country, in the West, have studied with Ajahn Sobin Namto. So that's fun to meet you with that. Yeah, you know, I teach a lot now on the internet, and I'm aware that there's a certain kind of sensitivity, very fine sense of sharing the same air, or certain details that are lost, but there is so much that's still here. And it's through this seeing and hearing and feeling and the language we share, the actual touch of words with each other, that a real sense of experience can happen. I'm glad you experienced that, especially now with pandemic and with the climate crisis. This is often what we have. And so we need to give it the good power, not just the bad power. So thank you.
Hi, I'm going to try to make the question in English. So if you don't understand, just let me know. Mm-hmm. I was wondering how to bring this practice to the real life. When I thought in making this question, I answered myself. I thought, okay, bring mindfulness. No? That's the real trick. No, we are in our cycle, so pause and bring mindfulness, and you can start from there. But I was thinking that sometimes we have conditions in our life, like we ask to ourselves so much that sometimes we are hurrying up, trying to make a lot of things during the day, like asking to ourselves perhaps more than we can actually do. And I was wondering that it's not just a question of attention, but a question of a matter of deciding what kind of life you want to
Beautiful.
to have. But anyway, I wanted to ask you, what are the keys to think to be able to bring this practice to real life? Perhaps this is one, but perhaps there are more, and if you don't mind to tell us a little bit about it.
Beautiful, beautiful, important question, Lorena. Thank you. There are more things. Just as mindfulness practice has great benefit, but doesn't teach us how to live all of our lives, with Insight Dialogue, yes, we can bring pausing into every day, but there's still, it's still complicated. It's still not easy sometimes, and we get lost. So mindfulness, this is one other thing, but it's so foundational, I want to really point to it strongly. So mindfulness of the mind, or mindfulness of our emotions or of the body, that kind of mindfulness that you learn, let's say in MBSR or something, the reason it's powerful is because it wakes you up to your inner world, and you have choice, and you can do that anytime. So if you practice mindfulness just by yourself, or like in MBSR or something, you get better at it, right? You remember to do it, you know how it feels to do it, the mind learns how to do it, the body learns how to relax a bit and do it, right? And that can go with you outside formal practice. So that's one aspect of mindfulness, but there's this other aspect that we're bringing with it. First of all, let me go back to this first part, this kind of just practicing mindfulness. Practicing mindfulness together, the body and the mind learn what this is. And it's a big jump, because that's the place we forget the most. I said that before, but it's worth saying again. I'm with my spouse, I'm with my sister, my brother, I'm with someone at work. I was completely reactive. I was completely functioning just like the old Gregory, or whatever. We all do that. It's natural, but it's also painful. And it's also keeps going. Why would it stop, without mindfulness, right? So practicing mindfulness with others is also something you learn, and it naturally migrates because you've made such a big jump. The first jump, the jump to being mindful with others. It's a huge leap. So that's just one piece. But remember, we were talking about the wisdom piece also, and the power of it. Mindfulness, not just of the body or of the mind, mindfulness of the wisdom piece. Mindfulness means holding something in mind, yeah? Remembering it. Remembering the body, remembering the mind, remembering your breath, remembering the wisdom element. So let's say, for example, that the wisdom element that I'm going to work with is, let's say I just read how important it is to cultivate giving, to be, to actually give to others as a part of your path, because it pulls you out of selfishness and it brings a kind of a practice of a material practice of kindness, and it involves mindfulness as to what do I give, and it's got all these powerful things, and I, let's say, am going to practice that wisdom. So now I hold that in mind. So I'm with you, like right now, this is real, like this is me, Gregory, right, speaking to Lorena, and I think, how can I be most generous, most giving with Lorena right now? It's real, and it's mindfulness here and now. But it's not just mindfulness of you shaking your head or of me knowing my own thoughts. The wisdom element is being held in mind. See what I'm saying? So it transforms your life into a living practice of wisdom. See what I'm saying? Now, let's change it. What if the wisdom that I'm going to be mindful of, hold in mind, is, let's say, the wisdom of how powerful it is, how beneficial it is to let go of wanting rather than try to satisfy getting everything I want. It's a teaching. It's just a thought, just words. But now I'm going to bring it into every moment with you. What am I wanting? What am I holding? How am I having you take care of me? Let's say, I want you to do something for me, or, so there's like selfishness there. Oh, that's not going to necessarily, but if I let go of wanting, all of a sudden I'm peaceful. I can just be with you. But let's say now I'm going into the kitchen and I'm going to make myself a cup of coffee. And I notice, it's really, wanting, and I don't have the kind of coffee, and it didn't, I burnt my coffee, or I added too much of this. It's like little tiny, stupid little dissatisfactions. Let go. But now we can make it bigger, right? So let's say, oh, wow, I go to work and I want acknowledgement, or I have my own business and I'm going to get as much as I can from my customers. It's like, what if I recognize in the mind, in the moment, oh, wow, I'm constantly hungry, I'm constantly wanting more. Let go. Oh, that feels much better. Oh, I think I'll live like this. So there's mindfulness of the wisdom aspect. You see what I'm saying? Now you can practice that without having to be super mindful of every move you make and like, I'm mindful of drinking, I'm mindful of reaching for my food. That's powerful stuff, but it's not the only practice. So there's a book that I wrote called A Whole Life Path. And it speaks about how every moment of our lives is path, for better or for worse. And how we can do that. And it uses the framework of the Buddhist Noble Eightfold Path. But the basic idea is that nothing is left out. So it's a beautiful, beautiful question, Lorena. Thank you.
Bueno, buenas tardes. Disculpen la música que hay de fondo, pero son los vecinos. Entonces, yo también había estudiado con Achan Sobin, y también sé que él, Gregory, practicó con Pante Punayi. Entonces, he estudiado a Pante Punayi y ha transformado mi forma de ver el Dhamma, porque él habla de lo que es la existencia y la experiencia. Y entonces Pante Punayi habla mucho de la experiencia y siempre dice que los eventos surgen de adentro hacia afuera, no de afuera hacia adentro. Y entonces ya lo había escuchado él y también había escuchado libros de biodescodificación que decían que el mundo exterior no existe y empiezan a argumentar por qué. Y también otro trabajo sobre algo que se llama los 3 principios, que es el principio de pensamiento, de conciencia y de mente, donde también explican que todo es interno, de dentro hacia afuera. Entonces, de Gregory yo había estudiado su libro, pero no entendía a qué se refería y cómo se aplicaba su método, hasta que Sandra hizo un retiro con una maestra alemana, no me acuerdo cómo se llamaba, la venerable, y entonces ahí con la práctica entendí a qué se refería su libro. Y lo que más me interesaba es lo que hablaba Gregory de la meditación intrapersonal. Y entonces dijo, que hay un nuevo método de meditar. Y que es interesante porque siempre cuando meditamos, meditamos solos. Y él propone que la meditación también se puede hacer en conjunto con otra persona, cuando habla, cuando platica o cuando interactuamos con otras personas. Entonces, por eso se me hacía muy interesante y bueno, yo aplico todo lo que él me enseñó en su libro para aplicarlo a la meditación de introspección, pero siempre lo veo que es de mí hacia afuera. Y todos los elementos que él da en su libro, siempre los veo que surgen primero en mí, la pausa, el relajar y todo eso, es del impacto sensorial que surge de afuera y cómo yo lo interpreto, y esa interpretación cómo modifica mi emoción, y esa emoción cómo puede dar un resultado de lo que yo interpreto y que puede ser generar una conciencia sana o una conciencia insana, para que yo pueda trabajar sobre la introspección. Entonces, me es muy interesante todo eso, y no sé si nos pudiera hablar un poco más de lo que él interpreta como la meditación de interpersonal. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, Andrés. Gusto en verte.
A gusto.
I'm going to translate the question. Andrés is very interested in exploring how different meditation techniques, first of all, kind of like appreciate first the inner world and then the outside world, almost as if the outside is not really real, but only the inner one, because it's within the inner where all the experiences start. So he's wondering if you can talk about this a little bit more deeper, and how this can be related with interpersonal meditation, that you don't need to meditate alone.
No, thank you. Every action comes from the mind. No action occurs without an intention, a direction, something, an energy that drives it. That energy, the direction of that energy, is the heart of our ethical life, and it's the heart of the energy of our path of freedom, our path of waking up. So at that essence, there's no distinction between inner and outer. It's all that moment of where is my mind, my heart, my life headed? Where am I going? That's the Buddha talks about right intention. So that's a sense of direction, a sense of the urging of the body-mind towards the next thought, towards the next word, towards the next action, right? So if your next action is formal meditation, what is the purpose of your meditation? Is it to have nice experiences? Is it to cultivate a good and awake mind, a good heart? And what is the purpose of this thing I'm doing, this job I have, this relationship that I'm in, this this gift I'm giving, anything, and to recognize the power of that is then itself a practice. To see where is my mind going, and that takes a great deal of mindfulness, right? So we come back to that right mindfulness in terms of understanding intention and where is my life going, where is my action going. When we meditate together, we begin to awaken to the intentions that are operating when we're with other people. Wanting, not wanting, intentions of compassion, intentions of letting go, of relinquishment, intentions of, self-concern, self-building, selfishness. So the transformations of meditation practice and the transformations of a life lived with care are very similar, and they need each other. You cannot separate them. When the Buddha talked about the path, it always began with giving, actual giving. And this was followed not by meditation, it was followed by morality, like non-harming. And eventually you come to the part of the path of meditation. But it starts really in these very, very human places of how we live. So a sense of a whole path includes all the different meditation practices that you were talking about that could interest you, and it includes how we live a good, caring, moral life. Relational meditation, and this will be my closing because we're coming towards the end. Insight dialogue brings the awakening aspect into the power of relationship, and it brings the power of meditation practice into the relationship, to our social lives, our relational lives. It invites a quality of care for all, as well as a brightness and clarity of mind. So thank you, everybody, very much. I want to thank, of course, Sandra and Bea and Lou. Thank you for all your hard work. And Tsuming and Nancy and Jean and the other support people. Things like this, they take a lot of work, a lot of human effort. And it's good for all of us to know that, because our friends are all giving their time freely. Wow, thank you. I mean, how great, how really great is that? There is the intention, yeah, right. There is the intention to offer an insight dialogue learning experience this coming next fall of 2022. I would let Sandra or Bea perhaps speak about that. Also, perhaps Sandra or Bea, whoever's going to speak, you could speak about insightdialogue.org, even though it's not translated into Spanish. Let them know about it. And if anybody wants to translate it into Spanish, I will bow many times. Yeah, so go right ahead.
Thank you, Gregory. Muchísimas gracias a todos por participar el día de hoy. Como Gregory lo mencionó, ha sido el esfuerzo de muchas personas detrás de cámaras. Estamos siguiendo la tradición del budismo Theravada, que es en base a la generosidad. Si alguno de ustedes tiene esta inclinación en ofrecer a Gregory sobre todo algún apoyo, les ponemos aquí en el chat su link donde se puede realizar este apoyo. También les compartimos en el mismo link, disculpen, en el mismo chat, su libro traducido al español, lo pueden ver ahí también en el link. Y efectivamente en el 2022 estamos planeando hacer un curso de 8 semanas de Insight Dialogue para gente hispana. Todos están muy bienvenidos a este curso que vamos a estar haciendo en el 2022. Igualmente, el próximo domingo a las 12 del día, me parece que son las 7 de España, 12 del día de México, en la Ciudad de México, estará nuestra querida maestra Aya Nopama dando un seguimiento a lo que Gregory Kramer hoy nos ofreció. También va a ser dirigido para la comunidad hispana. Y como Gregory lo mencionó, también está la página de Insight Meditation Community, en donde ustedes pueden observar todas las actividades que hay sobre Insight Dialogue. La mayoría de ellas están en inglés, y por eso estamos haciendo este esfuerzo para abrir la puerta al mundo hispano, para que también tengamos acceso al Insight Dialogue en nuestra lengua nativa. Entonces, ahí está, lo puso Carola, www.meta.org, es ahí en donde pueden entrar a la página de Insight Dialogue. Bea, ¿quisieras decir algo más?
Nada, solo reiterar el agradecimiento a Gregory, a la comunidad Insight Dialogue y a todos nosotros por estar aquí con la intención de seguir practicando. Pues si llegamos al final, igual podemos abrir micros si queremos para decirnos adiós y hasta pronto, hasta la vista. Gracias, Gregory.